Expected goals is a metric that was developed to give a better sense of how good a football team's performances are beyond simply looking at the scorelines that they produce. But do these numbers always accurately show what's going on? And does XG always tell the whole truth? Before expected goals, the best way of measuring a team's production in front of goal was by counting shots. As we know though, not all shots are the same. A shot from 30 yards is much less valuable to a team than a 6-yard box tap-in. Expected goals was developed as a way of giving more information about the quality of chances to give a sense of how well a team was generating chances in the opposition's third, and how well they were preventing chances for their opponents in their own third. So using a model built from a huge data set of all the shots across a number of leagues and a number of seasons, an analyst can now input information about an individual shot to determine how likely it is to be scored. The information inputted will depend on each model, but could include the location of the shot, the location of players between the ball and the goal, the height of the ball, or whether the assist is a cross or a shot. What the model will produce is a number between 0, a chance that cannot possibly be scored, and 1, a chance that cannot possibly be missed. This number will reflect the historic likelihood of the shot being converted. For example, in the Premier League, a penalty has around an 80% likelihood of being scored. This means the expected goal value, or XG, of a penalty is represented as a figure of 0.8. Now, with each chance assigned a value by the model, you can then add up all of the values of the chances that a team has created in a season and compare the total XG value with the actual number of goals scored to see how they match up. For example, after their 4-1 win over Crystal Palace this season, Arsenal had accrued an expected goals value of 53.8 for the season compared to 66 actual goals, according to FBref. This means that they were overperforming their expected goals to the tune of around 12.2. In other words, they've scored just over 12 goals more than they were expected to. At the other end of the field, over the same period, Arsenal had picked up a 27.0 expected goals against compared to 26 actual goals conceded. Again, this represents an overperformance, but a much smaller one than the XG performance, with the London club conceding 1 goal fewer than you might expect them to. If we take Arsenal's XG and subtract it from their XG against, then it gives us an expected goal difference. Over the period of the season that culminated with their 4-1 win against Crystal Palace, Arsenal have an expected goal difference of 26.7. Per game then, they have an expected goal difference of plus 0.95, which means you would expect them to put up a goal's worth of chances better than their opponents on average. Now clearly Arsenal are worth their place in the Premier League table. But at the other end of the spectrum, we see a team like Bournemouth, who have an expected goal difference tally per game of around minus 0.9. Now that means that you might expect them to concede around a goal's worth of chances more than their opponents in a match. This is reflected in their table position, with the South Coast club currently sitting in the relegation places. But what happens when a team's position in the table isn't reflective of their underlying expected goal numbers? Is it just so simple as to suggest that the team overperforming will eventually slip back down to where their numbers suggest that they should be? Or should an underperforming team hold fast and wait for things to turn back around for them? Well, this has happened a couple of times in the current Premier League season. For instance, Fulham have spent most of the current campaign in a much higher position in the league than their numbers suggest that they should be. Most interestingly, they were actually the worst in the league for expected goals against at a point where they were challenging for a European spot deep into the season. Now, in these situations, it's always worth assessing the context to see where these numbers are coming from. And if you do that with Fulham, it becomes apparent that the bulk of their expected goals against are coming against top half sides. In fact, so far this season, their expected goal difference against top half sides is minus 16.67. Whereas their expected goal difference against bottom half sides is plus 4.51. Now, clearly this indicates that their expected goals against figure is skewed by their games against top half sides. So despite their poor numbers, the context reveals that Fulham are probably closer to their mid-table position than their numbers might suggest. And at the other end of the table, Leeds United under Jesse Marsch presented the opposite problem, a team struggling to win despite good expected numbers. Again, the context provided some insights into why this might be happening. When breaking down the XG values into scoreline game state, that is, when Leeds were drawing or one goal or more up or down, it soon became apparent that they were much more productive in negative game states, particularly when they were 2 goals down. In other words, Leeds became a much more dangerous team when they were already losing. Now, once again, the context provides some background colour as to why the underlying expected goal numbers might not match their position in the actual table. If Leeds were better at generating expected goals when they were down in games, it does raise questions about the sustainability of their approach in the long run. Expected goals add a really helpful layer of data that allows us to analyse team performance with a greater level of detail than the previously available metrics allowed. However, they also require context to avoid simply equating raw expected values with good or bad performance. If you like this video, please consider subscribing to the channel. The Athletic is home to some of the world's best sports journalists, including journalists dedicated to each Premier League team, so every fan gets the coverage they deserve, not just the big clubs. And you can try it for free now for 30 days. See the link in the description.